All right, welcome everyone to the Digibois anime podcast, where Digi's wallet watches anime and bullshits a podcast for fun every week.
Yeah.
My name is Ghuntz, Discord big baby boy, and we're gonna go and introduce the rest of the people on this podcast. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm Jacob. I am a Discord, I think, more patron.
What do you mean more?
More patron as in I'm pledging $3, right?
Oh,
you said big
high
baby
roller.
boy. That's my
Got
role.
you
I thought
tied.
you were saying a role on the patron chat. Anyways, I think one thing Ghuntz forgot to mention is that we're watching this week the Jojo 1993 OVA. So in our introductions, because the OVA is an OVA made for fans, I think we should mention whether or not we are a Jojo fan prior to actually
Or
getting started.
if you've even seen JoJo.
Yeah, if you've
Not
seen
just
it,
if you're a
JoJo
fan.
at all, whether you have any prior experience. So, my name's Jacob. I am explicitly not a JoJo fan. I consumed, anything I know about JoJo has been through osmosis, being, proximity to other anime people. So I know memes. And I think I read, two pages
about the
of the
year
first...
days.
2 pages of the first chapter of the manga once. Didn't really like it, obviously, because I dropped it after 2 pages. All right, next up.
All right, I'm lethargilistic, but you can call me Leth. I follow JoJo for the memes sometimes, so I don't have zero experience with it. But I'd never actually sat down to watch it before, so this was my first experience, and it was
Did you know the story before, or just the memes?
just the memes. I know the story basically, roughly, for part 1, and then I guess part 3, because I had heard about towards the end of this, but other than that, nah.
Just coming back around to me, I knew the structure of the story. I knew it was a family of explorer people who were fighting because of a grudge against some evil vampire named Dio. But I didn't actually know anything beyond that. So I knew the structure of the story, but I didn't know the actual content of the story itself.
All right, I'm Miki's Stopwatch. I watched 1 episode of JoJo's and thought it was pretty boring and gave up. Yeah, I don't know what to say. You all can call me Miki, though, because it's a lot shorter.
All right, Pawn?
Okay, I'm Pawn, and I've seen all of the JoJo anime that there is. Not the 2000 OVA, but at this point, that's the only thing left. I don't know anything about the manga, though.
So I'm StudentofEtherium, or just student, and I'm a huge fan of JoJo. I've seen all the anime except the 2000 OVA, and I've read all the manga and own the manga, and I love this series in every way possible.
Well, we got
All right.
one at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think most of us, just as a result of the fact that this is a thing for fans, most of us are going to be, I would imagine, pretty down on this just because it is really bad at being an introduction to JoJo. But I think
And
for fans...
I'm gonna be down on this as a fan because it does a poor job of telling this story.
I mean, as a moderate fan of JoJo, I found this to be just fine.
I should
Pawn
also
doesn't
say
hate this.
I'm not a fan of Stardust Crusaders. That's something that might also affect my opinion.
I'm not very much of a fan of this because, in general, it's just kind of a weird adaptation that is too literal in general. As
Yeah,
somebody,
and it cuts out too much of the story too.
okay, because a lot of
It feels as though it was only meant as something to add animation to a highly respected fight in the community, which is the Dio versus what's his name?
Taro. Joseph.
Jotaro.
Yeah,
Jessica.
that one.
Not
Yeah, I mean,
Jotaro, yeah.
Jotaro.
Kuja,
names are hard.
yeah.
yeah,
Do
it just
we
seems
get the
like
name in
something
there?
to sort of release to the public because the fans like the fight and
Mhm.
because they'll buy it.
Which is,
I mean, this is pretty old considering, like, it's in 1993.
the fact that that fight is so well respected, though, to me seems kind of weird, because just jumping right to the 6th episode right off the bat, that's a great way to start. It felt sort of just like a punch 'em up to me. Like, I don't know.
It is just a punch 'em up, but it's a really good punch 'em up.
I don't know. It didn't feel like special in any sort of.
And also consider what anime and manga was like back in 1993, too.
No, I was gonna say for the time maybe it was a special punch 'em up, but I mean, like, I guess.
It's a fight that hasn't aged well, but it's for what it is trying to do. It is excellent.
I actually thought that the part that I liked the most in regards to fighting was the first episode.
Really?
Strangely.
Really?
Yeah, I think that fight
Honestly.
had some more like tactical sort of like it had a tactical setup. It could have been solved in a way that was interesting. The way they actually went about doing it wasn't particularly interesting. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that from the moment that the one dude's head gets sucked into the water cooler,
yeah,
that's
that's a really
when-
cool kill. by the
that
way.
was a really cool kill,
Yeah.
and like it did a good job of establishing like sort of more horror-esque trappings of Jojo.
Yeah, I thought.
Because the way that they reacted to the fact that there was an enemy stand was like really scary.
Yeah.
Well, how would you react if you saw a guy get decapitated and then have his head sucked into a water canteen?
Well,
Yeah.
like I would freak out. But I thought actually after watching the OP and watching that kill, I thought this was actually going to be like a full-on horror OVA because that was a
JoJo
really gory kill.
Did start as horror, kind of, in Phantom Blood. There were a lot of horror aspects.
Yeah, maybe.
Which is something that's been completely lost in the new adaptations.
I don't know. I think JoJo was always this sort of scatological sort of humor show. I don't think even when it tries to do horror, it does it that particularly well.
Well, when Hirohiko Araki wants to do horror, he won't go all the way, but he'll do what he does pretty good. And that shows up in later parts when there are some genuinely horrifying stands that they fight. That
I'll tell you what was horrifying. The first 5 minutes of every episode.
Wait,
Oh
no.
my God.
I think
should
the
discuss
first,
that.
Well,
God.
actually,
Yeah, let's discuss it.
I think
It
the
was
first
the-
4 episodes were horrifyingly bad.
no, we're talking specifically about the opening 4 minutes.
The OP. I think the OP was part of what, set it up for me. Like, I thought, in terms of, like, seeing it as a horror show, because I thought, after the first shot of the OP, I thought, okay, so this is going to be, like, one of those Indiana Jones on Medias Res intros. He's going to jump in and save the girl, and that's going to be our introduction to the character. And then she just gets whacked, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is actually just a horror show.
Yeah, we should be a little more specific. So every single episode of this OVA starts with a 4-minute, 33-second montage of like some sort of Mayan-ish sacrifice ritual where this naked woman gets her head cut off. No significance whatsoever to the plot otherwise.
I don't know about no
that is
significance.
apparent.
I mean, it's basically the best way you could do a introduction to the entire series, because that mask is what turns
Dio.
Dio into a vampire.
Yeah,
correct?
but then the mask is only ever relevant to the first part, and the mask is only relevant as a plot device to turn Dio into a vampire.
Well, yeah, but like they don't set that up. They don't have the time to set that up in the actual OVA because
But
they
they
start.
waste 4 minutes and 30 seconds of every episode on
no,
this.
No, I don't think it's great. I think they should have only included that in the first episode. But at the same time, like what the fuck do you do when you start in the middle of part 3 as an adaptation?
Yeah.
Well, why did they even start in the middle of part 3 is what I want to know. Like, if it was just to adapt the Jotaro Dio fight, like, why adapt the entire second half?
They didn't even adapt the entire second half. They adapted 4 fights from it.
Student, do you know anything about the release schedule of part 3? Because maybe that has to do with the release of this OVA.
It started in 1989, and went for a couple of years. It was over by 1993, but it had only recently just ended.
So, okay, then it seems kind of perfect in release, because if it started in 89 and it took a couple years to end, people would be more familiar with that last stretch, or from the middle to the last stretch. So it would seem like it still seems like the most fan servicey way of adapting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of diminishes the actual quality as an OVA.
Yeah,
Were the Endduel and Darby fights actually well regarded within the JoJo community?
People love the Darby fight just because of how bullshit it is. And lots of people like the Naduel fight. I like the Naduel fight, but it's not one of the highly regarded fights as far as I.
Because the Darby fight felt really different to me. The Endduel fight, just though, it seems like such a bizarre place to start because it's completely inconsequential in terms of like the actual getting to the actual Dio fight. Like, we have no reason why they're out in the middle of the desert. They don't get anything from beating him. It's kind of baffling.
Stardust Crusaders are kind of split up into two parts: them getting to Egypt and them in Egypt getting to Dio. And the Naduel fight was the first fight that happened after they got to Egypt.
Yeah, my read on it was that the Naduel fight was what confirmed that Dio was actually in Egypt for them. That was just my read on it. As someone who hasn't watched anything or read anything.
Yeah, in the Stardust Crusaders anime, the second season starts with the Naduel fight. It is the clear start of the second half, but they could have conveyed it better.
Yeah, and in preparation for this, I accidentally watched the first 3 episodes of the 2000 anime, which is basically the first half of part 3. Mm-hmm. So they did know that Dio was in Egypt. They didn't know where. So I don't really think that works. It's just so weird to me that they just threw these 5 characters at us, the main cast, had them fight this guy with no backstory other than his power, I guess, and just...
Yeah, that's the main point that we should get at here, is that they don't explain any of this.
Can I just bring up that that's the weirdest part of this OVA? Like, that's really the most baffling thing about it, is the fact that it starts halfway through the actual arc. Mm-hmm. And that the first, like, half of that actual arc doesn't come out until 7 years later, until the 2000 OVA?
Yes, 2000.
And then the fact is that the way it was aired with that 2000 OVA is that it aired those 7 episodes, and then the 6 episodes of the OVA that we watched. That's the way it was meant to be watched, but...
Yeah, like even on Wikipedia, it has their release dates just there. It's like 2000 and suddenly 1993. What?
I got a question about the more modern adaptations of this arc. You said it takes 2 26-episode seasons?
24, I believe, but yeah, around that.
Now, what I failed to understand is how can they take... Like, how much more fleshed out is this in not only the manga, but in the newer adaptations?
They cut out a ton of fights.
No, go ahead. I mean, I have a corollary question, which is sort of the fact that the first 2 parts of Jojo are adapted into like are adapted into like 10 to like 13 episodes apiece, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the first 2 parts of Jojo are a lot smaller than the other ones. Phantom Blood is only like 45 chapters, and Battle Tendency is only like 95, and then Stardust Crusaders is like 150.
Only 150 chapters.
Yeah, so this is like when he finally figured out what he really wanted to do with it, huh?
Yeah. And then every part after that has been an equivalent length of like 160 to 180 chapters.
So, when you said it was adapted into 2 24-episode seasons, do you mean like this OVA took 24 episodes?
No,
the modern
they cut out a lot of content because in Egypt... Well, at the end of the Naduel fight in the OVA, Naduel mentions how there are the 9 gods that being represented by stands, and we see 2 of those gods in this. And in the actual series, we see all 9 of them.
Who's the other god that we see? Is it Dio? Or
no, it's Darby. They never did say his
Yeah, Darby didn't get a tarot card. I like.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
They never mentioned his
I
stand
have
name.
no clue about the significance of the tarot cards. Those
Well-
kept being mentioned, but
all of our heroes and Dio, their stands are based on tarot cards. For example, the World is a tarot card. The Fool is a tarot card. But
Hierophant is also a tarot card.
yes, but the Egyptian gods that Darby and whatever his face Nadul has are actual Egyptian gods. Unlike the tarot cards.
The tarot cards thing was in the first half of Stardust Crusaders. They named all of the villain stand or all of the stands after tarot cards, and usually it was like tarot card plus color. So like Hierophant green
Or Magician
Silver
red.
Cherry. Yeah. And then Araki just got bored of it or ran out of tarot cards for the second half.
He decided he likes music. He likes classic music more than tarot.
Yeah. It makes for more interesting names too, I think, the music.
Speaking about names, what the fuck was the deal with Vanilla Ice?
Starting... Well,
Oh right, we watched the dub. Some of us watched the dub. That might be important to mention.
yeah, it was copyright. Someone in chat said that it was copyright. That
Oh no, because I saw...
so it is copyright, except that the reason that they change it due to copyright now, but that's only because of an incident in 2004 where Prince's lawyers got super pissed because they tried using the name of a Prince song for a stand, and then since
The
then they
Purple
just
Rain?
changed the name.
Purple Rain Prince.
No, Golden Wind, I believe.
Oh no, I meant like the guy who sued them was Purple, like the guy who yeah.
So in 1993, they would have had no reason to do that. Although this might not have been dubbed until, yeah, no, this wasn't dubbed until like the 2000s, so it might have been that, or it could just be that the people dubbing it thought that Vanilla Ice was a stupid name for a vampire. I think that's what it was.
I mean,
It was still the name of the episode.
I was watching the Japanese version, and they clearly say Vanilla Ice, but the subtitles say iced.
Yeah, so it was either due to copyright or it's because they thought it was a stupid name.
Man, he really should have had a cooler theme song though. Like they played some elevator music when he came in, and I was expecting that intro riff, man.
I was expecting Under Pressure.
They never named Vanilla Ice's stand, but his stand was called Cream.
That's cute.
Well, because there was a band called Cream.
Yeah. Eric Clapton was in it.
So, I think the next thing we can talk about is like the real reason why someone not into JoJo might choose to pick this up, and that's the involvement of Satoshi Kon. Okay.
Yeah, that is like the highlight of this.
He wrote every single episode except for episode 3. He did the direction on episode 5, which we're definitely probably going to talk about in depth. And then he also did some random ass animation in episode 2 that like stands out among everything else in that episode. It's
Wait,
So-
he did write everything except episode...
Three.
Three.
So he's
Darby.
a garbage writer
Huh,
then,
okay.
is what I'm hearing, because those were the like episode 3 was the best written episode, even though I don't like the
was
poker
it?
scene. Yeah, I think so.
oh, that's controversial.
Okay. This is where I get into
On IMDb, actually.
I mean, episode 3 was the Darby episode.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Araki doesn't understand how gambling actually works unless Darby is intentionally a horrible gambler.
You can interpret it either way.
Yeah, because like he cheats all the time. So
I remember this from the chat. You and me, we had a problem with that. He plays that hand like garbage, but most people don't know that, right? Like most people aren't experienced poker players, and they don't know that the first thing Fish will do is like bluff their ass off, and they get way too attached to bluffs, right? Like the average person will be like, "Yeah, that's a great scene. I like that." Right?
Right, but
like,
I kept
had
making
a lot
this
of people
argument
saying that was the highlight of the series for them.
that no professional poker player in the history of the world has ever played against Jotaro, who can move things really fucking fast.
Yeah, and also his bluff was really intense.
I mean, I understand that it was really intense, but there's no way you don't play on a hand where you have 4 kings. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that hand is so good.
That fight wasn't about the poker. That fight was about the bluff.
I get it.
Point out
I
an
just
inconsistency. 1 second. This is a nitpick I have to get out there. So Darby could have easily just declined to let Jojo make his final raise of his mother's soul, because Darby didn't have to actually consent to betting that he would reveal Dio's stand secret, right? He could have just said, no, that's too valuable, I'm not betting that, right? So he could have just not let Jojo bet.
wait, no, that's part of poker. He could have folded.
He didn't accept the raise, but the thing was he had already admitted defeat in his mind.
Yeah, which they did set up with the surface tension game.
I have a physics problem with that, but I'm not gonna get into it because it's really fucking
If we
complicated.
get into how Iraqi is bad at science, we will be here till next week, because the later parts have so much bullshit science.
These are minor nitpicks.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
minor inconsistencies.
Yeah, my problem is mostly with how that glass is presented. If it was actually tipping when he added the chocolate to it, just fucking show that visually. Make sure that we're aware that that's a proper tumbler and that it's gonna tilt like that.
It'd be hard to do that subtly, though.
No, it's not. It's just that when the guy sets it down and fills it, you show it fucking rocking just a little. It's not hard, but it looks flat most of the time, that entire glass.
Well, then the issue is, why didn't the characters notice?
You have to do it subtly enough that the characters won't notice, but the audience will. And that's a hard line to...
And it's all... That's...
get over.
Right?
That's also impossible. Just because of Jotaro's ability. He would have noticed.
Yeah.
If they were going to call attention to it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's just that, mostly, I feel like most of the thing with this stand stuff is that it has these quote-unquote rules. I think the rules are broken a lot of the time, and they don't really make sense other times.
Stardust Crusaders is really loose with its rules on stands, and they get ironed out more as the series goes on, and Araki figures out what he's doing with them.
Another problem that the series has is its constantly doesn't make its audience aware of all the powers that its characters have. And that's not making your audience aware of the rules, right? When Jotaro gets picked up by the dog in the first fight, we had no clue that the dog flying was one of the rules the fight was being.
When would they have introduced that Iggy could make himself a kite before? When we'd just been introduced to Iggy.
When he was fighting Polnareff, right?
That's considering Iggy's entrance into the series is set in stone. He could have introduced Iggy earlier and then had a fight where Iggy could fly. If you're going to talk about theoretically changing the structure of the story.
They did have a fight where they could do that. He fought Polnareff earlier, right?
I mean, my biggest problem with the series is that even when they cut stuff, they did apparently truncate a bunch of the volumes, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff that did actually happen in the series is way too literal an adaptation of the manga.
They could have afforded to cut out more than what they left in.
I was trying to watch this with a friend, and my problem was that before I actually showed the friend the actual adaptation is that I brought up the fact that I thought you could cut 10 or so minutes out of every episode. Flat out, and you'd get the same story.
Yeah, there were a lot of random sort of slapstick gag moments that really didn't land and took up way too much time.
That's the problem with Stardust Crusaders as a whole, again.
Well, I mean, my take was that you could take 20 minutes out of the beginning out of the establishing shot of every scene, and you could take 20 seconds out of the beginning of every establishing shot of every scene. You could take 20 seconds out of the end of every scene, and it'd still work. You'd still have the same gags. You'd still have.
You could also take out 4 minutes and 30 seconds from the beginning of every episode.
Yeah.
I was trying to avoid that. That's a little too obvious.
Okay, we have to completely forgetting the fact that the OP appears in every single episode. How do you grade the OP as just by itself?
I think it's really cool imagery that doesn't really relate to the JoJo franchise for most of it.
It was pretty fucking metal.
The Aztec stuff is the stuff that you could really cut. But like the stuff with the what's her face in the hotel room, Holly, right?
Yeah,
mommy.
Holly in the hospital. That they should have made it more like that and less like the Aztec sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even really like a OP in the sense of how we would think of an OP today per se. It's just a thing at the beginning.
It feels like an episode recap.
Was
Like,
this
not like an
released
OP.
in a theater? Because that's my fucking
No.
take. Is that the fact that the OP of this is just to like catch you up on what's happened since,
I don't think.
and sort of fill
I think
you
it was
in
just
on the
released on video.
okay, and sort of fill you in on the motivation of the characters, because the scenes with Holly are why everyone is doing everything in this series.
And that's,
Yeah.
But they
for
don't
the
really
record, that's
explain that.
really unclear until like episode 3. They mention, like you have no clue why they're doing what they're doing really until episode 3.
Like, if you watch a standalone, you'd have to watch it 2 or 3 times to actually understand anything that's happening.
Yeah, and that's only really even Jotaro and Joseph's motivation. The other people, like French guy or sunglasses
Buonomo.
guy,
Kakyoin.
their names have just flown out of my mind. I had them written down. I don't know where, but anyway,
Polnareff and Kakyoin. I know Kakyoin's name now.
they have completely different backstories from the other people that are entirely unrelated. Like Pontareff, the French guy, he's trying to avenge his sister for the guy, and kill a guy with 2 right hands or something like that.
Yeah,
which I learned from 2000. That never mentioned except he has like misgivings because he used to work for Dio or something like that. And
They mention that him going back to France at the end, and that has no weight in this because you don't know why he's going back to France, or even that he's from France. They never explain Polnareff is French.
Yeah, I mean, judging from his last name, I always assumed he was fucking Russian. Like, I had no idea he was French. His first name is Jean-Paul. Where the fuck would I know that if I didn't look it up on fucking Wikipedia?
In the dub,
I mean, does
too.
Polnareff sound French?
In the dub, he doesn't sound French at all. He sounds like a surfer dude.
Yeah, he doesn't have a French accent. If that's what you mean. I don't know if that's
Can we
an
talk
actual
about the
French
dub
name.
voices?
Yeah, I was asking about the
No,
name.
his last name isn't French. You never hear Jean-Paul.
Well, JP is a French name.
No. Jean-Paul is a French name. You don't hear it in the actual anime. You don't know his name is actually Jean-Paul. It's Jean-Paul like Kirchhoff or something.
Well, he has blonde, slick black hair, and he's an arrogant bastard, so he must be French. There we go.
That's fair.
Fair.
Fuck the French.
And
wow,
Kakyoin,
I wasn't going to take it that far.
Kakyoin gets completely shafted in this.
Yeah, no, I didn't know his name when he came back.
In the English dub, he has the best fucking voice actor. Like, his voice actor is actually fucking trying.
And they just shove him out for an episode and a half, and
It's not just an episode and a half, because he gets like 3 lines in those first 3 episodes.
yeah,
Like he is.
and they never explain why he disappears.
They did, because he went. His eyes got gouged, and they mentioned he went to the hospital at the end of the Derby fight, or towards the end of the Derby fight. So it was explained, but like
But then for the duration of the Derby fight, it's not clear why he's not there.
he's in the hospital.
It can kind of be assumed because the slash that the water thing does across his face is right across his eyes, right? And
Yeah.
when he shows up
Right,
later...
but every other character took a fucking major hit to, like, their neck, and they're all still there.
Well, let's not mention the arterial spray coming from Abdul, or Avdul.
Abdul.
That name is obviously supposed to be Abdul. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like Paula Abdul.
Yeah, it's really inconsistent what attacks actually incapacitate our characters. That's a problem I had with the Endul fight, actually, because you have Abdul getting that neck slash, and that takes him out for the duration of the fight. you have Kakyoin getting his eyes slashed. That takes him out for 3 episodes. And then when Jojo's hanging off of the glider, Jotaro, my bad, is hanging off of the glider, he gets hit with like a million different attacks at once, and he's fine. He's fine. He just brushes it off. It's whatever. I can still, beat the shit out of Endel when I get to him.
Doesn't Dio like punch a truck full of oil or gas into him and explodes, and he just comes out perfectly fine?
Okay.
Yeah,
it's even worse
cool,
in the
man.
English. In the English, because in the Japanese dub, he actually coughs like 3 times before that, and you're like, who the fuck is coughing? That's not Dio. But in the English, they just drop him coughing altogether until he comes back, and it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, but, I mean, someone was mentioning that's just sort of a... Well, someone was mentioning in the Discord chat that's sort of a problem that all shonens have, or all action series have, is, like, understanding what hits are actually intended to be impactful.
Yeah, especially back in the day.
Yeah, one way people have found to work around that is the named attacks. Like, when an attack has a name, like when Kakashi puts the lightning on his hand in the Naruto, I don't even know what it's called anymore, but he yells the name out, and I know someone's gonna fucking die, right? In this, when I see aura, it's just like, it's completely up in the air. They might as well have rolled a dice on whether it actually does any damage whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing where Jotaro is trying to punch Dio in the head for a long fucking time, and he actually punches him in the head, and like, oh no, Dio's fine after that. Okay, why are you trying to punch him in the head then?
Dio was fucked up after that, but he got back to the what's it called body, the Joseph Joestar's body, and then he drank his blood, and then he was fine. So I was fine with that. The blow to the head did impact Dio.
It's kind of fine for Dio to take a ton of hits too, because he's a vampire, so he's supposed to be able to take more damage.
But Dio randomly exploding at the end of the series didn't make any sense either. Like, why did that punch happen to make him explode? Is it because it occurred after he stopped time via force of will? Like, I don't know. It makes no sense whatsoever.
It was because he hit his Stan's leg at an awkward angle, and like damage done to Stan's happens to you, I guess.
Well, yeah. You can see that elsewhere. Even with Avdol in the beginning, that does kind of actually set it up that damage to your stand actually hurts you yourself.
Yeah, they set that up a lot in the duel fight.
Yeah, but that punch from the Platinum whatever actually destroys... Yeah, Star Platinum actually destroys Dio's stand, which is why it actually destroys Dio, which I thought was fine in the context of what we've actually seen.
By shit before, right? Like, you see the world get punched a lot before, and he never explodes. That's my point. It's just that this punch at a narratively significant moment.
But it's narratively significant, but it was also an awkward place. Like, before they were always hitting each other's fists, and you could see a little bit of damage because of that. But then he hit him like on the knee, So I mean, it's if you accept the show's bullshit, then it works, and I don't really see a reason not to there.
I mean, this may just be due to the fact that episode 5 was fucking incredible, the Satoshi Kon directed episode, but like at the same time, I was way more sold on that than like anything that was happening during the Nadoon fight or the Darby fight, with the Dio fight. Like, I was just so much more
sold on the Vanilla Ice fight that you even forgot.
Well, Satoshi Kon didn't direct the Dio fight, though. Like, he directed the lead up to it.
He directed episode 5, but episode 5 elevated the whole OVA.
Yes.
Episode 5 was mostly the vehicle ride, the vehicle chase, right?
Yeah, it was a chase
plus the stuff with Kakyoin.
Yeah, where everybody becomes Spider-Man, everybody just jumps from building to building, and just, it looks amazing.
Yes.
Like...
That's the one episode that actually managed to balance some sort of narrative tension. Like, it actually has some sort of, like, overriding...
Yeah, we don't know what's going on. We gotta find out.
It makes Dio... Because we only meet Dio in the 4th episode. So... Whereas before, like, in if you're reading the manga, you have like 150 chapters of Dio being evil, and you hear about him for him to be threatening. But in this, they need like 2 episodes to make him a threat.
Yeah, and I mean, even beyond that, you have Dio from like the original series being a fucking like asshole.
Yeah, so they need to get like 4 years of build-up into 4 episodes.
And really only the 3 episodes at the end.
I think they do a good job of that by having Dio, like, take the car, drive it down the sidewalk, all GTA style, kill everyone.
Yeah, we see Dio being threatening.
Yeah, he feels more menacing than any of the other guys they've faced so far. But once you learn about what his power is, some of the scenes get so stupid retrospectively that it's just like watching it for the second time. It sort of breaks all sense of suspension of disbelief.
Dude, that's my favorite part, is that he knows nobody knows that his power is to stop time, so he just postures a lot. He just stands there making a cool pose, and then he stops time, and he, like, moves you, and then he just goes and stands back there, and he makes the same pose again, because it's fucking funny.
That scene with the American ambassador was probably one of the best scenes in the whole OVA.
Oh, I mean, he gets so much mileage out of that ambassador.
There was a similar scene in the that was cut where it's Polnareff at the bottom of a staircase and Dio at the top, and Polnareff keeps trying to get up the stairs. And I can understand why they would cut that scene, because it's basically the exact same thing as the scene with the ambassador. But it's just so cool seeing Dio using it like that.
I like that he has like a sort of he can have a laugh and have sort of fun with his powers. He's not like Dio's one of the better villains, I'd like to say. He's probably the most memorable one out there of all JoJo.
Certainly up to Stardust Crusaders, he's the most memorable.
Well, yeah, because there's only like one other one.
Yeah. Most people forget.
I mean, the Pillar Men are awesome, but
You're talking about Kira, right? I've heard a lot of stuff about Kira.
Yeah, Kira is a great villain. I mean, honestly, like, after Part 3, the villains get a lot better.
Okay, yeah, but my problem with a lot of the stuff with both Dio and the Duel is the fact that they don't fucking finish anyone off.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of times where they could have just started fucking killing people, especially considering their powers, and they don't. And you just...
Darby gets around that because he actually gets the soul of Polnareff and Joseph for a while.
Yeah, but Darby's fight has its own problems.
Yes.
Darby's fight seems to have the villain seems to actually have like limitations that prevent them from just like up and fucking over the main characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Darby can only take someone's soul when they've lost a bet, is what I gathered from his fight.
Yeah, and the Darby fight is more like what JoJo would become down the road, where the fights are like puzzles.
The Dio fight, though, I do have a serious problem with, in the fact that we have no idea how often Dio can use the stand.
Yeah, that's never really covered. But that's never covered in the manga, really, or the anime.
I mean, you know, he tries really hard. He can stop time for more time.
But only 5 seconds at a time.
I don't think that fight is something they intended you to think very hard about.
Oh yeah, you're not supposed to think about that fight. It looks cool, and that's really it.
But I think ultimately that can like be a totally valid criticism, that the fight isn't supposed to be thought very hard about, and that it sort of completely falls apart the moment that you do start thinking about it. Like,
now, see, I tend to not like that line of thought because I see it as asking me to turn my brain off, you know, but on the other hand, it's true because the narrative structure that it uses is effective in this when you don't know what's going on, you know, like it sets up tension by having the audience be unaware of what's going on, and then once you know, that's
But the intended
gone.
audience, the other problem, isn't unaware, right? Because they're
But the
fans.
intended audience
Yeah.
would just be looking for these scenes and these fights to get animated.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the problems with this OVA is that you can actually just level them straight at. I mean, okay, so there's two possibilities. The first of all is that the adaptation cuts out stuff that would actually explain it, or you can actually level a lot of these complaints straight at Araki's original work.
Well, I think there's complaints that can be sent to both.
Yeah, there's stuff with like Nadul that where like it's never clear exactly what he can hear. For example, he can hear sand hitting Jotaro, but at the same time, he can't hear people fucking breathing on those fucking boxes for 10 minutes.
You can't hear Jotaro's chain clinking, even though it was very clearly doing so.
And he can't hear them talking.
Yeah, they literally talk. He doesn't even need to hear them breathing because they are talking.
I mean, they made a point of trying to avoid that a little bit with that scene in Satoshi Kon animated, I'm sure, where they were signaling to each other. But eventually, like, that was just abandoned.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the best fights are always going to be the ones that like you can think about in depth, and they do make sense, and they're also visually engaging. And I don't think that this series has anything like that whatsoever.
No, there are a lot of fights later down the road that work really well when you think about them.
I don't mean... Oh, I shouldn't have said this series. I should have said this OVA.
Okay, yeah, because in Star Wars
Yeah.
Crusaders, Araki was still learning how stands should be working, so he couldn't go and do really cool ideas. He had to keep things basic.
Yeah, that actually really bothered me about this. I think you've mentioned it a couple times, but just how undefined the nature of the stands are. Because sometimes it's like, you know, a suit of armor for the character that just lets them use that power. Sometimes it's a spectral projection that lets them see the person's cards, and sometimes it's an arm that spreads out of their chest. Like, there's no consistency whatsoever to any of it.
Does this change in the manga as it progresses?
Well, I mean, the thing I've heard about it is that it becomes much more like regimented and solid on the rules, which is like really kind of like if you talk about there are basically two types of magic that you can include in the series. The first one is metaphorical magic. It doesn't really follow hard and fast rules. It's basically based on what's going on with the actual characters and shit. And then there's this sort of stuff, which is that it's entirely based on these hard and fast rules. You develop magic systems. It's very scientific. It's very straightforward. And I think the thing is that Araki wasn't prepared for that at this point, I think, is what I've heard.
By the time like the next series, Diamond is Unbreakable, got to its like halfway point, stands had really been more firmly defined. And unfortunately, like, the series does hit a certain point where stands are so well defined that their potential starts getting limited, and then Araki just went and rebooted the series.
Limited in what sense? Because I feel like a lot of the stands, at least in this part of the series, are so overpowered that Araki has to make the people who use them complete morons in order to make the fights fair. Like Vanilla Ice isn't vulnerable unless he's visible, so he has to be a complete clown moron who makes himself visible.
The way that that's balanced later down the road is A, the stands aren't as powerful, and B, the heroes are more powerful. So they can properly fight that type of thing.
My take on all of that is just that Araki hadn't gotten to the point where he realized that he had to really strictly define them. I mean, you can even see this in the duel fight at the beginning, where you're never aware of what exactly he can hear from his cane. Like, that is the most important part of that fight, is what he can hear at what moment. And Araki isn't on top of that, because part 3 is where he actually introduces stands, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the beginning of part 3.
Okay, yeah, so he's still kind of figuring out how to define that system to make an interesting story.
Yeah, and that leads to a lot of ass pulls and a lot of confusing moments. Like, you mentioned he doesn't define what Endul can hear. He also doesn't really define how powerful Endul's attacks are. Yet, like, a lot of stuff feels undefined and nebulous, and it just sort of advances as necessary for the plot. I don't know. It's a little, but like a little bit. It feels. Someone mentioned while we were watching it that it feels like it was like done week to week.
It was.
Everything was in service of the plot, and I agree with that.
A lot of Stardust Crusaders can be summarized with Araki got better at it. And writing weekly is something that he definitely did get better at. Where, like, that's a huge issue with weekly writing in general, is that you can change it you can change what you're planning on doing too easily. So there's no real defined, like, outline for what's going to happen.
And I have a question. In the modern adaptation of JoJo, do they, like, is it as faithful as this OVA clearly was? Or do they work to improve upon that and make the rules that the stands follow more clear, make their powers more clear going in? Or is it just a fairly faithful adaptation?
They remove a lot of the things that were kind of unclear at the time. But the modern adaptation is incredibly faithful in the right ways. So they will change things if it's inconsistent.
Because I'm just trying to understand, like, obviously character design is fantastic, but beyond that, I'm trying to understand, like, why the hell this got so popular. Just because watching this is like I thought this OVA was like really bad.
You need to put yourself in the time period.
Like I said, art looks fantastic, and I'm sure that's
JoJo's
unusual
always
for
been
manga at that time.
Both a product of its time and timeless at the same time, so that it's always like been relevant to what is the trends of anime and manga at the time. And so at this time, this is like when Fist of the North Star and stuff were really popular. So just seeing big guys punching each other was what people wanted to see. And this did it the best.
When anime was manly for manliness' sake, as opposed to,
like,
now.
They mentioned that Jotaro is like 2 meters tall, and that's all muscle, and now the main characters are, like, thin and lanky.
Really? So he's abandoned his everyone is beefcake art style?
He's changed it. He still has a very distinct art style, but it's not beefcakes anymore. Now it's like most people describe it as pretty boys, but it's changed a lot. Like, there was a period where it was quite cartoony. His art style develops.
Yeah, I feel like it has kind of a Frieza effect going on, where everybody knows Frieza, fewer people know Cell, nobody knows Boo.
Yeah.
I don't know any of them.
But yeah, everybody knows Dio. No, I don't even know anything. About,
nobody
like,
knows
part 4 or
Poochie.
5.
Nobody knows Diavolo. People know the main villain of Part 7 entirely off of memes, because he's the president.
President of what?
The United States.
Oh my god.
He's also looking for Jesus.
I feel like that was made for that, just to be known by memes. God.
Part 7 has the weirdest premise.
So here's a question: do you guys prefer the sort of puzzle fights?
Yes.
In general, to the punch 'em ups of like episode 6?
I definitely prefer the puzzle fights.
They can be punch 'em ups, but as long as they sort of make the environment interesting and make the set piece entertaining, I can deal with it. If they're just jumping around from building to building, it loses a lot of that creativity, like I saw in the desert scene, for example.
For myself, it's all about like the setup of the different characters and like why they're fighting. So that's why I didn't get a whole bunch out of most of the fights. But
yeah, that's not something you're getting in this OVA.
Yeah, but but the structure of it, like I mentioned earlier, was tight in certain areas. Like for me, like I didn't get the poker minutia that you guys did, so that fight didn't fall apart on that for me. So it had a classic tension setup for me, but then the fight with Dio and Joseph had so much visually there for you to chew on. Just everybody going everywhere, the blood
using
splatter,
its environment
just,
really well.
Yeah, just all of that thing. So it made up for that and made it visually interesting rather than emotionally interesting. So I thought it was interesting. Just like I didn't care about a single person in this entire goddamn show, but I was still engaged in those two fights. And that's unusual for me.
Yeah, let's talk about the visuals in the OVA, because I think on some levels I actually prefer the way it looks here to the way it does in the modern adaptation. I feel like the cell animation is kind of the way that it feels like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because this is supposed to be like a Fist of the North Star beat 'em up, and this looks like a Fist of the North Star beat 'em up. Whereas in the modern adaptation, it looks more like anime today, with heavy stylings from Araki still, but it looks more like...
I mean, it looks almost too clean
Yeah.
now.
And the OVA was a lot more contrasting. The shadows and the colors were a lot more toned down, and
I think that's...
especially there's a lot of black and a lot of shadows.
I think that's something we can put on Satoshi Kon, because the manga's just black and white.
Tell you where there wasn't any black on Jotaro's face when he was smoking that cigarette. God damn, 10 out of 10. Delinquency.
I was waiting for the English dub to have it be mentioned as like a lollipop or something, but no dice.
Nope, just a youth smoking a cigarette.
When did he get that drink?
Which, yeah, Jotaro is supposed to be 17. Like,
but I think this is R-rated.
Could not believe
right?
that when I heard that in the 2000. Like, what?
Yeah, Araki was a fan of making young characters really, really tall and muscly.
He's a big boy.
I mean,
big boy.
And this is a digression to the 2000, but it can connect back because all the characters who aren't major look normal. They're not beefcake at all. Like the people on the train in the 1993 anime are just regular, like you would see anywhere.
I mean, there was the two Speedwagon guys that were buff as shit.
Except for them, because that was a joke. Like that was a setup for a joke because you thought they were gonna be a stand user, but then it was the dog. You know.
It was a good joke too. I think that joke I think worked better here than in the modern adaptation. I can't really remember.
Yeah, in the modern adaptation, there's a lot of build up to Iggy because it's like, this is the person who will be helping us, and we get like half an episode of build up. Whereas in this, it's just like, hey, here's a new stand
it's
user.
just the beginning.
Here he is. It's a dog.
But I like how much they drew it out. Like, it was 2 minutes where Jotaro's just looking at these guys and going, so which one of you is the stand user? It's one of you, right?
Nope, it's a dog who farts on people's faces.
Yeah, and considering that was a joke based on how he usually portrays people, I think it could have worked better if they made it clearer that that there's a distinct style for the main characters. But like, it still worked. I still chuckled.
I chuckled too, but when I saw that scene, it was like sort of, because we hadn't seen those normal characters, I just assumed, like, what I know about JoJo is these ridiculous character designs, so I assumed everybody looked like that, and it was so I don't think the joke fully landed until I watched the series again. But again, this is made for fans, and if you're a fan, you're gonna get that right away.
All right, we got anything else? Want to talk about the dub voice acting?
We absolutely should.
I mean, there's nothing really to say except it was before we had any kind of standards. We still don't, but like before then.
Abdul's voice actor should be addressed.
Yes, he drops his accent, he gets his accent back.
And his accent in general is just terrible.
Yeah, what is it? Was it supposed to be like Jamaican? It didn't sound
the
Egyptian.
character of Abdul is supposed to be Egyptian.
I mean,
Well, he really dropped it in episode 3, but then he was acting alongside Darby, who really liked gambling.
You all like
Gambling.
engaging in some gambling?
But then
I know a thing or two about poker.
But then when he needed to say something that was longer than a line or two, he just completely dropped it too. So like nobody was taking this serious except for Kakyoin.
yeah,
I
Kakyoin
like-
MVP.
I like Joseph's voice actor.
Oh, Joseph.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, that
It,
was
it fits with his type of character because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was alright. He felt like some Johnny Quest or something. He
Yeah,
was good.
I wouldn't mind if that voice actor had like come back and to do the new dub of Stardust Crusaders. But it's the type of voice that fits his character.
But then Jotaro was really bad.
Oh
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
he was atrocious.
I had a comment in there. I said he sounds like he's trying very hard to be a convincing straight guy.
That didn't work at all. But it's the same kind of thing with Dio too, because in the Japanese version, he was like unhinged. You know, like Dio, I'm going to destroy you all. Like on the verge of laughing the whole time. But then the English comes on and it's just like, yeah, you're gonna die today. It's just normal. It's super weird.
Yeah, the voice I haven't watched this OVA subbed, but the voice actor for Dio in the modern adaptation is really good. And so like there's the dichotomy of someone who is just like perfect in the role, and then there's this.
And there's just this guy.
Yeah.
I feel the same with like again Frieza, to be honest. Like I much prefer his original voice actor, but then Kai came out and it ruined everything. But you know, conversation for another day.
All right, I think we've trashed this whole thing enough. How about we talk about some of the positive aspects?
The aesthetic that it gives everything, like the art style.
Looked good.
Yes. Looked
Thank you,
great.
Satoshi Kon. May you rest in peace.
Yes.
There was a lot of real good animation in there.
Well, it's also
Yeah.
just the fact that it's JoJo and it has those iconic character designs. And I think what you guys mentioned about color scheme, about how this is more muted than the more modern adaptation, which is more bright colors. I think that plays pretty well here. in
Yes,
terms of,
especially
like-
because like I get what they're going for now because they're trying to adapt all of JoJo when later in JoJo it becomes the more colorful, more like stylized, unique thing. But for the time, it definitely was just like Fist of the North Star type thing.
Oh, and there are some the comedy. It has some really bad moments, but there are some moments where it does land, where they do a good job with the comedic timing. Obviously, what stands out is the end of the Darby fight with the cigarette and with the juice. That actually made me
juice is the
laugh,
best joke.
and that's not common for an action series to actually make me laugh.
Something else I thought was like I know Iggy is controversial to say the least, just from the reactions that were in there too. But I really dug his character design. Like that was
Iggy's design
the
is
most.
great.
Yeah, that was the most like emotive dog I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I was gonna say the dog smiles
as
were
a dog
great.
character, he's just so expressive. Like the moments where he's fucking like fucking with Jotaro, or he's fucking with what's his face. He gets that fucking grin on his face, and I can't help but laugh every time I see that.
The smuggest dog you ever did see. I thought he looked a lot better here than he did in the modern series.
But one of the things that one of the fights that I wish they had adapted is Iggy's solo fight, because he got to fight all on his own,
Oh yeah, I like that fight.
and that would have been a better way for them to find Dio's mansion, because that's how they found it in the original, as opposed to Darby just telling them here.
Yeah, in this one, it's just sort of like the plot demands they find the mansion, so Darby tells them.
Yeah, like
so much of the show is like that.
add another episode of them looking for the mansion and have Iggy solo fight in there, because like The other one is 7 episodes. This one could have been 7 episodes.
Or they could have merged the first 2 episodes into one. Like,
Well,
there's
yeah,
a million ways they
cut
could have redone this.
The 10 years of still shots and bad slapstick jokes that don't yet land, and you'll be able to fit that in.
We're trying to be positive, Jacob. Positivity.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, they
sorry.
also could have cut a bunch of moments out of every episode and had, a whole episode left over by the end.
Yeah.
And they still could have done it in 6, well including that solo fight, I think.
Well, okay, I guess it's about all we have to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yep, sure.
Let's all hug at the end and cry.
Oh, yeah, voice line. It was
That
all
was
Fujobe
another
the whole
great
time.
scene.
I mean, for me, it's a strong 3, light 4, and I'll mark it as a 4 just because of the Satoshi Kon episodes. But I couldn't recommend this to anybody who was interested in JoJo, let alone somebody who's interested in good anime that I enjoy. But
I'd recommend this to someone who
it
likes
was a fine
Stardust
group watch.
Crusaders. Like, if you like Stardust Crusaders, this is more of that in a cool style.
A potentially better version of those 3
Yeah.
fights if you are already familiar with Stardust
Yes,
Crusaders.
if you like JoJo and you like Stardust Crusaders, watch it. You will get something out of it.
Or at least watch episodes 5 and 6.
Definitely.
You don't necessarily need to watch 1, 2.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3,
watch
and 4.
those 2 specifically. And I liked how they did the Derby fight here. But
Yeah,
you
if
can,
you
you
like
can
the Derby
definitely
fight.
skip episode 4 and episodes 1 and 2.
Okay, my take on it will be, as a person who knows nothing about JoJo and doesn't really care for JoJo, I will say that part 5 is worth watching. I mean, the episode 5 is worth watching on its own. To actually get the context for that, you need to watch like the last minute of episode 4, and then episode 5, and then episode 6 kind of wraps that up, but it's nowhere near as good as episode 5. Episode 5 is the one that is directed by Satoshi Kon. So that episode fucking nails everything it's going for. It keeps the tension going. It keeps you on the edge of your seat throughout the whole thing.
According to IMDb, episode 5 was the one he wrote. He directed the last 3.
The whole last 3?
Yeah, all.
No.
According to
No,
IMDb, at least.
Did he?
Yeah.
No, I thought.
I think if you check on the actual video's credit listing, you'll find that he only directed the 5th one.
Okay, I'm going off of what IMDb says, so I don't know.
Yeah, because he wrote its whole series except for the Derby fight, but he, unless they just decided, hey, fuck it, Satoshi, do whatever you want on episode 5, I don't see how he would do it especially different on all those different ones.
Well, I mean, episode 5 is the one that actually has, like, real tension going throughout it. It's real tense all the way through. It actually doesn't, like, fuck up in the adaptation.
Well, and they could have definitely done something with the Nadul fight if they had tried.
Oh, I definitely agree. The Nadul fight is like cool conceptually, but like it's just in the execution when you actually think about it that there's just like too many problems with it.
Mm-hmm. I think Satoshi Kon could have done something with it.
I
think
agree.
you really have to rework the way they actually go about solving that fight if you want to have a satisfying conclusion, just because like it requires an ass pull to solve it. Like the dog has to fly, and we don't know the dog can fly, right? The guy is too far away.
His power is just that he can make basically whatever he wants out of sand, and that would be completely overpowered, except he's a dog.
I mean, the dog flying wasn't as much of my problem as much as the fact that what Darby, no, not Darby, but Nadul can actually hear is really unclear. Because there's a point where he can hear sand hitting someone, but he also just can't hear people breathing the whole time. Like,
Yeah, we've already been over
Yeah,
this.
we've been over this. I think the point is that you could have like one of those like tactical chess game Shikamaru versus Tamari fights if you wanted to and if you were willing to rework it. Like there's the setup for that there, but it's not well executed at all. I think that the Dio fight definitely has some cool visuals, and I really like that even though it makes no sense logically, I really like the scene of Dio in the car with
That's the best
with the
scene.
senator. That is the best scene in the OVA. So yeah, I would say that if you're a JoJo fan, you should probably watch episodes 5 and 6. The
And
rest
if
of
you
it,
like the Darby fight, watch episode 3 because it's a good interpretation of it.
I mean, personally, I'd give this like a 2 or a 3.
I give
Like,
it a
it's bad.
6.
I'd say 6 is good.
I give it a 4 exclusively from episode 5. Otherwise, I would also give it a 2 or a 3.
So,
All right.
Yeah, well,
Are we
I
done?
think we're all done.
yeah, I think we got it all out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well.
All right, good. So I guess
Thanks for participating,
Yeah.
guys.
yeah, I guess we'll see you next
Yeah.
week.
Well,
Yeah,
new episode next
maybe.
week, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Talk about something completely
It
different.
May or may not be even us.
And it may
We
or
don't-
may
we don't
not
have regulars
be
yet.
Bible Black. Since that was
Oh,
our
God,
second
no.
place.
Gosh.
I hope we land on that eventually.
Are we gonna
We're gonna
Whatever
get that
it is,
eventually.
hopefully it's something
are we gonna keep
that
all
more
9
people
shows on this drop roll?
care about
Yeah.
than JoJo.
I mean, we got a lot of discussion out of JoJo for something that only one person is a fan of.
yeah.
Imagine when we're all a fan of something.
just
Then
we
we
all
might
start
not
we all
have
start talking
anything to
about
talk
Digi.
about.
Just the only thing we have in common.
Whoa. All right. Anyway, that's it. It's
Yep,
over.
bye.
Yep. Later.
Bye.
We're the Digibois. You know what Digi thinks. Now you know what Digi's wallet thinks.
We're gay.